The first time my husband missed one of the recitals, I believed him without hesitation. His name is Aaron Kessler, and at the time I still thought trust was something that stayed intact if you handled it carefully enough. Our daughter, Livia, was 7 years old and had been practicing her violin for months, fingers raw, chin bruised, determination etched into every stubborn note she dragged out of that instrument. The recital was on a Thursday evening at the Community Arts Hall, the kind of place that smelled faintly of old wood and lemon cleaner, with folding chairs that squeaked when parents shifted their weight. Aaron called me that afternoon from the airport and told me his flight had been moved up last minute. He said he was furious, said he tried to get out of it, said work didn't care about timing. I told Livia her dad was sorry. I told her he loved her. I told myself the same thing. When she scanned the audience that night and didn't see him, her face fell for just a second before she lifted her violin and played anyway. I clapped until my hands hurt. I cried in the car afterward, quietly, where no one could see. The second time he missed one, I felt a flicker of something colder. Our son, Matteo, had taken up piano the year after Livia started violin, mostly because he wanted to do something she did too, something that made people watch him. He was 8 and dramatic and painfully sensitive, the kind of child who pretended not to care while caring far too much. His winter recital was on a Saturday morning, early, inconvenient, but planned months in advance. Aaron told me the night before that a client emergency had come up and he'd have to drive out of state. He said it wasn't optional. He said he hated that this always seemed to happen. He said I didn't understand how much pressure he was under. That night, when I reminded him that Matteo had asked about him all week, he snapped. He said I was trying to guilt him. He said I was making him the bad guy. He left before dawn. At the recital, Matteo scanned the audience just like his sister had, his jaw tightening when he didn't see his dad. When the applause came, it felt thinner, less celebratory. On the drive home, Aaron called and asked how it went. Matteo answered the phone himself and said it was fine. His voice was flat. Aaron didn't notice. By the third missed recital, the narrative had shifted. Aaron didn't just explain his absence, he framed it. He told people, including our parents, that I was bad at communicating schedules, that I forgot to remind him, that I didn't understand his job. When I tried to push back, he said I was defensive. When I showed him emails and calendar invites, he said things changed. He told the kids he wished he could be there, but that sometimes Mom made things difficult. I didn't realize how carefully he was laying the groundwork, how each small comment planted doubt. It wasn't until Livia came home from school one afternoon and asked me why I never told Dad about her concerts that I understood what was happening. I knelt in front of her, heart pounding, and told her that wasn't true. She nodded, but I could see the question lingering behind her eyes. I work as a project coordinator for a nonprofit. My schedule is flexible, but it isn't careless. Months before every recital, every performance, every rehearsal that parents could attend, I requested time off. I color-coded the family calendar, I emailed Aaron reminders, I put dates on the fridge. He nodded, he smiled, he said he'd try. Then, a week before each recital, sometimes even days, a work trip would appear on his calendar, booked urgently, immovable. He'd sigh and say it was just bad luck. I started saving everything. Not because I planned to confront him, not yet, but because something in me knew the truth mattered, even if no one was ready to hear it. The moment the kids found the calendar was an accident. Livia was looking for markers in the office drawer and pulled out a folder instead. Inside were printed schedules, PTO approvals, and our shared digital calendar, printed out because I liked seeing things physically when I planned. Matteo brought it to the kitchen, confused, asking what all the highlighted blocks meant. I told them it was just planning stuff. Livia pointed to a date circled in blue, her spring recital. Next to it, in red, was a note in Aaron's handwriting, client trip, booked 3 days prior. Matteo frowned. He asked why Dad scheduled work when he knew about the recital. I didn't answer right away. I told them sometimes adults make choices that don't make sense. That night, after they were asleep, I sat at the table and cried harder than I had in years. Not because Aaron missed another recital, but because the kids were starting to see the pattern themselves. The final recital of the year was coming up, a combined performance, violin and piano, a bigger audience, grandparents invited. Aaron knew the date. He'd known it for months. I reminded him once, calmly, weeks in advance. He said nothing. A week before the recital, he came home late, energized, talking about a potential deal. He mentioned, casually, that he might need to travel the following week. My chest tightened. I asked him which days. He listed them. The recital date was in the middle. I asked him why he booked it then. He shrugged. He said that was when the client was available. He said I was overreacting. He said the kids would understand. I didn't argue. I didn't plead. I just nodded and went upstairs. That night, I opened my laptop and organized everything. Every request, every approval, every late booking, every message. I didn't know exactly what would happen next. I just knew I was done carrying the blame for choices I didn't make. The week of the final recital arrived with the kind of quiet tension that settles into a house when everyone feels something coming but no one names it. Livia practiced in her room every afternoon, door half closed, the sound of her violin drifting down the hallway in uneven waves, sometimes sharp, sometimes aching. Matteo sat at the piano in the living room, shoulders hunched, replaying the same passage until his fingers stumbled and he slammed the keys in frustration. I moved through the house, making dinners, folding laundry, answering emails, doing everything I normally did, but inside I was bracing myself. Aaron packed his suitcase on Wednesday night, laying out shirts and chargers on the bed like he was preparing for any other trip. The kids hovered in the doorway, pretending not to watch. Matteo asked him if he was coming to the recital. Aaron didn't look up when he answered. He said he'd try. Livia nodded, lips pressed together. I felt something in me snap. Not loudly, not dramatically, but cleanly, like a thread pulled too tight. Thursday afternoon, the kids came home from school, buzzing with nervous energy. Their teacher had reminded them about the performance, about standing tall, about remembering to breathe. I checked my phone. No message from Aaron. No update. I helped Livia with her hair, smoothed it back the way she liked, clipped it behind her ears. Matteo paced the living room in his dress shoes, complaining they pinched. I told him they looked fine. I told him he'd do great. I told both of them that I was proud of how hard they'd worked. I didn't mention their father. They didn't either. When we pulled into the parking lot of the arts hall, I saw Aaron's car wasn't there. I didn't feel surprised. I felt settled. Inside, the hall was fuller than it had ever been. Parents lined the rows. Grandparents leaned forward in their seats, programs rustling. The music teacher, Miss Delaney, stood near the stage, greeting students, her smile wide and genuine. She'd taught both kids for years and knew them well. She waved when she saw us and gave me a quick hug, whispering how excited she was for their duet later in the program. I took my seat in the front row, right side, where Aaron usually sat when he came. The empty chair beside me felt heavier than it should have. Livia glanced at it when she walked on stage with the other violinists. Matteo did the same when it was his turn at the piano. Each time they straightened and played anyway. Halfway through the program, my phone buzzed. A message from Aaron. Running late. Client dinner went long. I stared at the screen, then turned it face down on my lap. When it was time for the combined performance, the one they'd practiced together for weeks, Livia and Matteo walked out side by side. She lifted her violin. He sat at the bench. They exchanged a look, a small one, barely noticeable, and then they began. The music filled the room, layered and careful, violin soaring over piano, notes weaving together in a way that made my throat tighten. They were focused, serious, utterly present. When they finished, the applause was loud, sustained. People stood. I stood too, clapping until my hands stung, tears blurring my vision. Miss Delaney stepped forward to close the recital. She thanked the students, praised their dedication, then looked out at the audience. She said how important parental support was, how it made a difference when kids knew someone was always there. Then she said, smiling warmly, "I'd especially like to thank the parents who never missed a single recital this year, who showed up every time, no matter what." Her eyes found mine. She nodded, small but unmistakable. "Your presence matters more than you know." I felt heat rise in my chest. Not pride exactly, but validation. Quiet and steady. Around me, people clapped again. Livia and Matteo looked into the audience, saw me standing, saw the empty seat beside me, and something shifted in their expressions. Understanding, dawning, and undeniable. After the recital, parents crowded the lobby, congratulating kids, snapping photos. Aaron arrived just as the crowd began to thin, suit jacket slung over his shoulder, smile already in place. He hugged the kids, told them he was sorry, that work had been crazy. Livia pulled back first. Matteo didn't hug him at all. He asked Aaron why he always booked trips when he knew about recitals. Aaron laughed awkwardly and said it wasn't on purpose. Matteo nodded slowly and said, "Mom asked for the time off months ago. We saw the calendar." Silence fell between them. Aaron looked at me, eyes sharp, accusatory. I met his gaze and said nothing. That night, after the kids were asleep, Aaron confronted me in the kitchen. He said I'd turned them against him. He said Miss Delaney's comment embarrassed him. He said I should have defended him. I listened, calm, then opened my laptop and showed him the timeline. Every request, every approval, every last-minute trip. I told him I was done accepting blame for his choices. He stared at the screen, then at me, and for the first time, he didn't argue. He didn't apologize either. He just looked tired. The next morning, he left early, suitcase in hand, and didn't say goodbye. The house felt quieter without him, but not emptier. Weeks later, the kids asked fewer questions. They didn't need answers anymore. They had seen the truth for themselves. And I learned something I should have learned sooner. Showing up consistently is its own kind of honesty. Everything else is just noise.
You've just stepped into her revenge side, where every wound finds its justice, and every silence ends with truth. If her story struck a chord, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Your support keeps these stories alive. Another secret waits in the next video. See how her revenge begins.